That speech earlier, why was everyone laughing so much? Oh, just a few jokes in French and English. What did you say? You didn't understand? Never mind that, please tell me. You remember when you said you wanted to eat a buffet? And? You wanted to say buffet in English, right? But it's not buffet, it's buffet. Huh? Buffet means abuse, so you proudly said you wanted to eat abuse. I said, I'm counting on this newcomer who throws such a black joke. I am Natalie Smith. My husband Frederick and I have 2 children, both of whom are adults and live with us. I work part-time at the headquarters of a major corporation. This company has branches overseas, and employees from various nationalities work there. So not only Japanese, but also many other languages are spoken in the office. I used to work as a full-time employee at this company, but I requested early retirement due to my husband's retirement. However, I was asked to stay on as a part-time worker with a more flexible schedule, so I'm currently still working for the company. At first, I accepted the proposal and decided to work part-time, but in reality, there's not much difference in working hours compared to when I was a full-time employee. This is not conducive to enjoying my husband's retirement. Considering my working conditions, the company assigned a new employee to handle half of my workload. However, this new employee turned out to be quite a handful. Ashley-san is an outstanding and talented person who graduated from a prestigious university. As an expected new recruit, I was relieved to think that my job would become easier. However, she seemed discontent from the moment she was assigned. Why do I have to do this kind of job? I didn't miss the words, she muttered. She probably thinks she's too talented for this position and deserves something better. When she found out that I was her trainer, her expression soured even more. A part-timer as a trainer. Lame. Well, she might just be a slightly sharp-tongued newcomer. There are always people like that joining the company every year. This type of person joins the company every year. Having confidence in oneself is great. However, those with high pride often struggle when they face the gap between their self-confidence and reality. And then they leave the company feeling that it doesn't appreciate them. I wonder if she's that type too, but she's still young. I'll overlook her cheekiness for now. Are you a part-timer, Miss Smith? Yes, that's right. So, did you only finish high school? Huh? No. Wait, you're not saying you only finished middle school, are you? Ashley, what does educational background have to do with this job? You attended the orientation, didn't you? Yes, of course. Didn't they explain it to you then? This company doesn't tolerate any form of harassment, including asking about someone's educational background. Be careful about your behavior in the workplace. She seemed unhappy with my warning and maintained a sullen expression. It's easy to imagine that working together in the future might be difficult. Hiding your educational background. Well, I can pretty much tell. She seems to be unable to feel satisfied unless she speaks out her thoughts. Since you were assigned here to help me with my work, please make sure to learn it properly. She remained silent with a sharp expression on her face. Understood. Yes. She sat next to me and started chatting away without even doing any work. She went on and on about how competent and global she is. She claimed that she's good at both English and French. To put it simply, it was all just bragging, a way for her to show off. It's quite surreal to see a young person in their 20s trying to one-up a 65-year-old. It's quite surreal. And when it was time for lunch break, she invited me to lunch. Smith-san, can you treat me to lunch? Huh? I'm okay with it. But don't you want to eat with your peers? No, I'm your junior. Let me treat you as a way to get to know you better. I've seen a lot of young people, but she's the first of her kind. Well then, let's go together today. Thank you. But are you okay with the money? You're just a part-timer after all. Ugh. She's finally saying what she wants to say. She's so full of ill will. Really, she's just like a child. Yes, don't worry about it. By the way, is there anything you want to eat? Yes, I want to go to a buffet. Is there a good one around here? What are you talking about? Her statement made the entire office freeze. However, she seemed completely confident despite her obvious misunderstanding. Oh, right. You don't understand English, do you, Mrs. Smith? Huh? Do you understand if I say buffet? Well, let's go then. Thanks for the treat. At this point, her troublesome personality starts to look cute. Since then, despite receiving guidance from her, she's incredibly slow at learning. Of course, there's no doubt that she's capable of studying since she graduated from a prestigious university. However, whether it's due to her pride or not, she doesn't pay attention to jobs she's not interested in. Moreover, she's not aware of it. Everyone around her adjusts to her level and speaks Japanese. She's attended countless meetings so far, but it seems she doesn't understand the language and the conversation falls apart. She has absolute confidence in herself. Therefore, she probably doesn't even notice that people around her are being considerate. Ashley, the numbers on this document are wrong. Fix them right away. This repeats every day. With this, my workload will never decrease. It just keeps increasing. Well, if you found the mistake, why don't you fix it, Mrs. Smith? I'm not good at Japanese. Oh, really? Don't worry. This isn't a matter of Japanese or not. It's just numbers. Fix it quickly and submit it. I see her scowling face every day. I've become so used to it that I don't feel anything when I see that face. Ugh, what a hassle. I can hear you. Just do it. Then she stares at my face. Why are you acting so bossy as a part-timer, Mrs. Smith? Bossy? Be careful with your choice of words. Don't forget that you're in a position to seek my guidance. See? You're really bossy. Why is a part-timer in charge of training in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. Despite the approaching quitting time, all she does is talk. That's because I used to be a full-time employee. Huh? So you got demoted? No, not demoted, but downgraded to part-time. She bursts out laughing. Hilarious. So you can't do that job, huh? Honestly, she's so narrow-minded. Look, everyone has their own circumstances. We don't have time for unnecessary talk, so fix it quickly and submit it. All I can say for now is that I'm more skilled at this job than you. Enough with the useless chatter. Get to work. Even if she's academically capable, this personality makes her future worrisome. If I could be greedy, I would have liked to have more talented person assigned. Well, I'm not in a position to interfere with the company's decision. They assigned her to reduce my workload. I'm very grateful for that sentiment, but it's a rocky road ahead. I was under a lot of stress, but I endured it and faced her. However, she was the same. It seemed like she had her own stress built up. And to vent that stress, she took an outrageous action. There's a certain daily routine in this company. It's a morning meeting where one employee gives a speech. Of course, since this is a multinational gathering, the speeches are in various languages. English is the main language, but there's also speeches in Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and French. There's no particular content requirement. It's more like a practice ground for speaking confidently in public. And it was Ashley's turn to give the speech that day. She boldly stepped forward and started speaking in her proud French. But let's overlook the fact that her conversation was still quite clumsy since she's still a newcomer. The surrounding employees also directed gentle gazes at her. Then midway throughout her speech, she started introducing me. As a part-time job senior, she's been very helpful to her. That's why she wants to introduce me at this event. She wants to learn from my excellent part-time job senior speech. However, the face of the person who invited me was not just grinning, but very distorted. I see. She probably thinks that I downgraded to a part-time job, as she put it, could not possibly give a speech. Please give your speech in French, senior. The face of the girl whispering in my ear was very ugly. Am I, a 65-year-old woman, going to compete with a young whippersnapper in her 20s? As I started my speech in French, her eyes widened and she stood there with her mouth open. Of course, that's to be expected. I was stationed in Paris for 8 years, so there's no way I can't speak French. I still have high hopes for her growth as a newcomer. She's very humorous. She joked about wanting to eat a baguette a while ago. She gave me the opportunity to correct her in my mind, saying, "It's buffet, not baguette." I'm happy to be the mentor of such an interesting girl. Please take care of the two of us from now on. As I made that speech, the employees laughed out loud. Good, I managed to include some humor in my speech. My sense of humor isn't dead yet. However, while everyone was laughing, Ashley was still standing there, dumbfounded. Maybe it didn't get through to her? After the morning meeting ended and we sat down, she asked me, "What did you say earlier?" "Huh? Your speech earlier. Why did everyone laugh so much?" "Oh, I just included a few jokes in French and English." "What did you say? You didn't understand?" "Just tell me, please." "You said you wanted to eat a baguette before, right? So what? You meant to say buffet in English, right? Then it's not baguette, it's buffet, huh?" Baguette means abuse. So you probably said you wanted to eat abuse. I said I'm looking forward to working with a promising newcomer who can make such a dark joke. Then she turned red and teary-eyed. "You were the one who said you wanted to give me a speech. Why are you making that face?" Because this is a company. Watch your tone. I don't think someone downgraded to part-time could speak fluent French. Oh, were you trying to make me look foolish? Well, that was expected. There's no such thing as everyone following the same path in life. I have my own journey that I've walked. You're not my family, so you wouldn't know what kind of path I've taken, right? You don't know that I was stationed in Paris or San Francisco. Stop judging people based on what's in front of you right now. You'll end up being embarrassed. She doesn't say anything, looking down. If you were able to join this company, it means you've worked hard setting up until now, right? Be careful not to waste your efforts with your actions. Are you trying to one-up to me? It's annoying. You think you know everything, that you're so knowledgeable. Annoying. I think your strong competitive spirit is one of your good points. The moment you think you know everything, you're actually ignorant. There are so many things to learn in the world. Even at 65 years old, there's an infinite amount of learning to do. Every day is a day of study. You should also look to new things and grow without being complacent with your current self. She doesn't say anything back. And since then, she never opposed me again. When her mistakes are pointed out, she still shows a sulky expression, but she honestly fixes them and resubmits. 2 years later, she's able to handle all her work smoothly. Now there's no problem if I leave the company. And so I reached the day of my retirement, leaving the company where I've worked for over 40 years. There's a deep sense of emotion, but from now on, I'll enjoy my remaining years with my husband. I want to go to various countries, see different things, and gain experiences. My future is still bright. On my last day at work, after the scheduled time, the people in the department presented me with a bouquet. I gratefully accepted them, and as I was leaving the department, Ashley called out to me. "Senpai, here." She's holding a long box with a ribbon. "Oh, for me? Thank you. Can I open it now?" I unwrapped the paper, opened the box, and inside is a stylish wristwatch. "Wow, it's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for everything. And I'm sorry for all the impertinent things I said." "Aw, no. You were a cute, cheeky junior. When you first started working under me, I honestly thought you wouldn't last long, but you stuck with me. You proved me wrong in a good way. Thank you. Does this watch have any special meaning?" "Well, you'll be traveling to various countries with your husband, right? I thought it'd be nice if you could mark the time together with this watch." "Oh, wow. How thoughtful of you. I'm so delighted. I'm going to have to start using this tomorrow." "Natalie, are you free after this?" "I'm sorry, I have family plans tonight." "I see. My apologies. Is there something you needed?" "No, it's just that I wanted to treat you to a buffet as a retirement celebration sometime. Ah, that sounds nice. I'm going to look forward to it. I left the company with a peaceful feeling. When I got home, my husband, children, and grandchildren had prepared a retirement party for me. My husband's special roast beef and a cake made by my grandchildren under my daughter's guidance were arranged. My life is filled with happiness. I want to continue to cherish learning in everyone I interact with, including my family.
You can't possibly go on an overseas trip since your family is poor, right?
A classmate butts in on my daughter's composition. The classroom gets noisy. I hear voices from the parents saying, "There's no way they can go abroad, lol, and don't let your child write lies." My daughter looks down, frustrated. Then she shouts with determination,
"My dad earns 1.5 million yen a year, so we can go abroad too."
Laughter erupts in the classroom. "You can't go abroad with such a low income of 1.5 million yen. The bossy mom snorts with a mocking laugh. I was about to open my mouth when an elderly person from the parents' seats revealed the truth about our family. My name is Diana Williams, and I have a family of 3 with my husband David, who is a year older than me, and our 7-year-old daughter Fiona. David runs a factory and works hard from morning till night. He can't participate much in childcare, but when he has some time, he cherishes the moments with Fiona, and I think he's a doting father. Fiona is very attached to David, and even if they can't see each other much, she happily says,
"My dad working hard is cool."
I also help with my husband's factory while raising our child, and I feel that we're working together as a couple to manage work and childcare. I'm not particular about my appearance, I barely wear makeup, and my clothes are plain. It seems that Betty, a classmate's parent whose husband works for a famous local company, doesn't like me very much. When the mom friend group centered around Betty sees me, they whisper something while looking my way and laugh mockingly. At a recent PTA gathering in front of other parents, Betty belittled me in a mocking tone, saying things like, "Miss Williams, are you wearing that outfit again? You always wear the same clothes, don't you? Can't afford to buy new ones?" And, "Your husband always looks busy in his dirty work clothes, but his salary is low, huh? It's sad to work so hard and still be so poor." Hearing Betty's conversation, the other parents also start to giggle. "Hey Betty, it's tasteless to talk about other people's family matters in front of everyone like that." One of the parents raised their voice. The one who argued back against Betty was Kylie Price, my only mom friend and supporter. She glared at Kylie but turned away without saying anything. Kylie is a single mother raising her child in her family home and is respected by others for a certain reason. That's why she can't say anything to Kylie. The surroundings quieted down and the meeting ended peacefully. "Kylie, I'm sorry, thank you." "Don't apologize. The one who's wrong is her for speaking ill of you in front of others." Kylie smiles at my apology. It's no exaggeration to say that I can ignore their hurtful words because I have Kylie. I lived my days without caring about what they said. One day, while cleaning Fiona's room, I found a crumpled paper in the trash. The paper read, "Notice of Classroom Observation." I was surprised and immediately asked Fiona, "Fiona, I found this in your room's trash. Why didn't you give it to me?"
"Because, Mom, you get talked about badly by the other moms, right? I don't want you to feel bad."
Tears welled up in Fiona's eyes as she answered. I'd been brushing off their hurtful words, but Fiona was pained to see me like that. I hugged Fiona and said, "Don't worry, Mom will definitely go to the class observation. It's a presentation about our parents' jobs, right? I'm looking forward to it." Fiona smiled and nodded. That night, I told my husband about being ridiculed by Mrs. Betty's mom's group and how Fiona had seen it and thrown away the class observation notice. "It's terrible to judge people by their appearance. I can't believe we're called poor for earning 1.5 million yen a year," David said angrily. He then assured me, "I'll make sure to attend the class observation too. We'll show them." I didn't realize Fiona was listening to our conversation. On the day of the class observation, my husband was going to be late due to work, so I headed to the classroom alone. When I entered, the parents who had arrived earlier started whispering, Who's that? Wait, is that Mrs. Williams? No way. Is that really Mrs. Williams? She looks so different. The parents commented on my appearance. I was wearing fancy clothes and had put on makeup. It was a surprising change from my usual plain appearance. Although most comments were positive, Mrs. Betty and her friends started insulting me all at once. Look at her, the poor woman is trying too hard, haha. Who dresses up like that just for a class observation? She must be stupid. Maybe she's just trying to show she's not poor, but it's so desperate, it's pathetic. Though they insulted me loudly enough for me to hear, I ignored them with my head held high. This annoyed Mrs. Betty and her friends, who continued to talk behind my back. They continued to whisper behind my back for a while, but once the bell for the start of the class rang, they finally quieted down. The lesson went smoothly, and finally, it was my daughter's turn to present. Fiona spoke with a big, slightly shy voice. My mom and dad work in a factory. Sometimes my dad works overseas, so they take me along as a vacation.
That's impossible. The Price family is poor. They can't afford to travel abroad.
A classmate interrupted. The whispers began among the students and spread to the parents.
That must be a lie, right? It's not good to lie in an essay.
As the whispers grew, the parents looked at me with suspicion.
Traveling abroad is obviously impossible.
What kind of education are they giving her, making her write lies? The parents talk while casting doubtful glances at me. The teacher tried to calm the situation, but was too flustered to help. Fiona looked down in frustration, but then shouted with determination.
My dad earns 1.5 million yen a year, so we can afford to travel abroad.
I was surprised Fiona knew our income. At the same time, the parents burst into laughter upon hearing her words. 1.5 yen is a super low income. It's barely enough to survive, let alone travel abroad. Giggling, Mrs. Betty spoke. The other parents laughed too, saying things like, that's impossible, or their salary is too low. I couldn't take it anymore. Just as I was about to speak, a voice came from the row of the parents. Young lady, it's not 1.5 million yen, it's $1.5 million. The voice belonged to Mr. Victor Price. He is Kylie's father and the president of a company that does business with David's factory. He must have come to see his beloved granddaughter Kylie. Since Mr. Price's company also has dealings with Mrs. Betty's husband's company, she couldn't be too aggressive towards Kylie. $1.5 million? That's close to 200 million yen in annual income. Unbelievable, but if Kylie's father says so, it might be true. But why dollars? The classroom buzzed even more. Her father is a very skilled craftsman, and now he has more international transactions and technical guidance, so most of his income comes in dollars. He's a wonderful man who takes care of his longtime clients, no matter how busy he gets or how many new clients he has. Mr. Price continued in a clear voice that carried well in the noisy classroom. I don't think shallow people who judge others by their appearance have the right to criticize the Williams family. Mr. Price glanced at the parents, and they all went quiet at once. Mrs. Betty and her friends blushed and looked down in frustration. Just as the classroom quieted down, David entered the room. The parents are looking at David with surprised expressions. There stood David, looking like a well-dressed celebrity in a high-quality suit, a far cry from his usual appearance in dirty work clothes and covered in sweat. Sorry, I actually arrived just before Fiona's presentation, but I couldn't enter the classroom because it got noisy. David smiled at me as he spoke. Okay, everyone, quiet down. We're going to continue the class. Taking advantage of the quiet moment, the teacher resumed the class. After the class ended, David went to Mrs. Betty and said, It seems my wife has been under your care, with a smile. Mrs. Betty, at a loss for words, stammered, no, that's... I was actually just talking with your husband about our future contracts. He seemed to look down on my factory, and I can see now that you feel the same. I don't want to do business with your husband's company anymore. Can you please not involve my wife anymore? David tried to sound gentle, but the anger in his eyes was apparent. What? If you do that, your factory will be the one in trouble. Without the business from my husband's company, your factory will go under. You're just getting carried away because of your recent success. Mrs. Betty ranted with a red face before leaving the classroom with her followers. That was tough, David. Mr. Price, I'm sorry for the trouble. Thank you for helping my wife and daughter. No, I couldn't stand to see the family of my important business partner and friend being insulted. I'm sorry for being meddlesome and even talking about your financial situation. I may have stolen your moment to make a cool entrance. Please stop. I did want to say something, but my voice would have cracked. I'm grateful you spoke up instead. Come on, we can't have the highly regarded president of an industry in the spotlight being so timid. Looking at David and Victor chatting cheerfully, I get a question from David. Why did Fiona know about my annual income anyway? I'm not sure, but maybe she heard it when you told me about the school visit. Oh, that could be it. When I look at Fiona, she's looking at us too, smiling and waving at David and me. Seeing Fiona smile, I feel relieved from the bottom of my heart. Ever since that school visit, the other parents started cozying up to me as if they changed their minds. Mrs. Williams may dress modestly, but she acts so refined. She's a real celeb. Invite me to your house sometime. So, where do you go abroad? Bring me a souvenir next time you go. I'm fed up with their attitude, cozying up to me as soon as they learn about my income, after making fun of me before. I haven't changed my behavior and keep my distance from other parents except Kylie. People are so fickle, right? Bad-mouthing you behind your back, then changing their attitude as soon as they learn your true identity. Haha, thanks for getting angry on my behalf, Kylie. Oh, by the way, I heard from my father that Betty's husband is having a rough time. According to Kylie's story, Mrs. Betty's husband was transferred to a window seat department after his contract with David's factory was terminated. Mrs. Betty's husband's company heavily relied on the products from David's factory, and now they must downsize their business because of the terminated contract. Indeed, the company asked David to reconsider several times, but he stubbornly refused. That company acted as if they were doing us a favor by using our products. That's probably why Mrs. Betty's husband was so arrogant. I don't want to deal with a company like that, David says with a bitter smile. Even without the business from Mrs. Betty's husband's company, David's factory is not damaged at all. In fact, with more time to deal with other companies and train young workers, their performance has improved even more. Mrs. Betty's family is struggling as their company's performance has worsened and their salary plummeted. With the window seat position, the chances of promotion are slim. Rather, the company's survival itself is quite questionable. Victor's company is even considering terminating their contract with Mrs. Betty's husband's company. If their contract with Victor's company is terminated, they could go bankrupt. Mrs. Betty used to boss around other moms with a big face, but now she's rumored to have caused her company's crisis and has no followers. Fiona no longer gets ridiculed for being poor and enjoys going to school.
Mom, I like your usual style, but I'd be happy if you dressed up like you did at the last school visit,
Fiona tells me shyly. Alright, I'll dress up for the next school visit too. When I say that, Fiona happily jumps around saying, Yay! I regret involving Fiona because of my carelessness about my appearance. From now on, I'll have to pay a little more attention to how I look. However, I don't want Fiona to become a shallow person who judges others by their appearance. I am determined to teach Fiona that not only appearance, but also the inner self is important.
Grandma, Mom's got a tummy ache, help!
Around 9 p.m., I got a call from my 5-year-old granddaughter that took my breath away. When I asked to speak to her mom, my daughter weakly said on the phone, it hurts, Mom.
I called Dad too, but he's out drinking and told me I could handle it.
I was appalled to hear that he was out drinking, leaving his sick wife and young child behind. I was utterly astonished by what kind of person he is, but this was not the time to talk about such things. I quickly arranged for an ambulance and jumped into a taxi to head to my daughter's house. It took about 15 minutes to get there, and when I entered, the room was freezing even though it was winter. My daughter was curled up on the floor, seemingly in pain, while my granddaughter rubbed her back crying. I hugged my daughter tightly and told her to hold on. She lost consciousness after saying, Mom, this child... The ambulance isn't here yet? Hurry up and help my daughter! It took about 5 minutes for the ambulance to arrive, but it felt like an incredibly long time to me. That day, I ended up losing my precious daughter. My name is Tiffany, a 62-year-old housewife. My husband, who I supported as a housewife for many years, passed away 3 years ago, and now I live a lonely life by myself. However, my daughter Kelly lives about 15 minutes away by car and frequently visits with my granddaughter Elizabeth, which helps ease the loneliness. My 5-year-old granddaughter is an honest, kind, and adorable girl, much like my daughter when she was young. Kelly met her husband through work and they got married. He seemed like a reliable and manly man, so I thought he was the perfect person to entrust my quiet daughter to. But looking back now, I should have scrutinized his character more carefully. Kelly became a full-time housewife at her husband's request after getting married and chose a life of supporting her husband. For about a year after their marriage, the couple seemed happy, but around the time Kelly got pregnant and gave birth to their daughter Elizabeth, her husband's attitude changed. He became a so-called tyrant, showing off and leaving everything to his wife, which is unusual behavior for young people these days. One day, Kelly came to visit and confided in me with a sad expression. "Mom, I might not be able to come as often as before." "What happened? Is something wrong?" Apparently, the amount of living expenses her husband gave her kept decreasing, and now he only gave her $400 a month. As their daughter Elizabeth grew, so did their food expenses, and they needed to buy clothes. So Kelly started cutting back on her own food expenses, but even the bus fare to come to my house became a burden. That's when I noticed that although she ate a lot whenever she came to my house, she seemed to be losing weight every time I saw her. I asked her about it several times, but she always said, "I'm fine." Secretly, I was worried about her. Since then, I had given her money and bought her food, but it was difficult to interfere in their marital relationship, so all I could do was tell her to contact me anytime. But I should have played the villain and expressed my opinion to my son-in-law at the time. If my husband were alive, he would have definitely done that. I still deeply regret my decision at that time. One winter night, around 9 p.m., I got a call from my 5-year-old granddaughter. "Grandma, Mommy says her tummy hurts. Help!" When asked to speak to her mom, she pleaded in a weak voice. My daughter has always been a tough girl, so she must be in terrible pain. My granddaughter told me her dad went out drinking and wouldn't come home even after she called. I felt anger toward my son-in-law, who was so careless while his 5-year-old daughter tried her best to help her mother. But now is not the time for that. "I'll be there right away, okay? Everything will be fine." I arranged for an ambulance and took a taxi, arriving at my daughter's house in about 15 minutes. The ambulance hadn't arrived yet, and I hurriedly went inside, finding the house cold with no heating even though it was the middle of winter. My daughter was lying on the floor in pain, and my granddaughter was crying in her pajamas, calling out, "Mommy, Mommy!" She was just a 5-year-old and couldn't even turn on the heater. I took off my coat and covered my granddaughter with it. "Grandma, help Mommy!" I picked up my daughter and said, "Pull yourself together." But she said, "Mom, please take care of this child," and then lost consciousness. It was obvious even to an amateur that she was in a life-threatening situation. The ambulance arrived about 5 minutes later, but it felt like an unbearably long time to me. Eventually, my daughter was taken to the hospital, still unconscious. I tried calling my son-in-law many times during this time, but I couldn't reach him. What on earth is he doing at a time like this? Thanks to the skillful treatment by the doctors at the hospital, my daughter Kelly regained consciousness temporarily. "Kelly, do you understand? Elizabeth and I are here." "Mommy, Mommy!" "Mom, please save Elizabeth. Keep her away from Corey. Check the diary." "What? What are you saying?" I couldn't understand clearly, and I waited for her to speak again, but she lost consciousness once more and never woke up again. The doctor said that she had damaged her internal organs when she fell down the stairs and might have been saved if treatment had been faster. An overwhelming sadness struck me as I stood before my daughter, who would never smile at me again. Moreover, her last words were, "Save Elizabeth, keep her away from Corey, check the diary, were bothering me." "Grandma, Mommy won't wake up. Mommy!" I could only hold Elizabeth, who refused to leave her cold mother's side. After calming down, I gently listened to Elizabeth's story. It seems Kelly had taught Elizabeth how to make emergency calls to her dad, grandma, and her close friends using speed dial. I praised my grandchild who was able to make the call properly, saying, "You did great, you were amazing." But Elizabeth just cried, shaking her head. And then, I gradually learned shocking facts from Elizabeth's story. I was stunned by the contents. What should I do now? But I can't just grieve for Kelly and Elizabeth. The next morning, my son-in-law finally contacted my daughter's phone. "Kelly, is your stomachache better?" "My daughter has passed away." "What? My daughter? Is this Tiffany? Are you saying that Elizabeth passed away?" My son-in-law was confused, thinking that his daughter had passed away. "It's not Elizabeth, it's my daughter Kelly who has passed away." When I told my son-in-law, he seemed surprised for a moment and muttered, "I'm glad it wasn't Elizabeth." His words made it sound like he didn't care about his wife from the start, and I trembled with anger. I'll never forgive him. I waited for a little when he wasn't home and used my daughter's key to enter the house. When I found my daughter's diary in a drawer in the closet, I was shocked by its contents, and my anger was renewed. 3 days later, the son-in-law greeted the attendees at the funeral with a poker face, pretending to cry. "I'm sorry, Kelly. It's because I wasn't here due to work." He had been out drinking, but he lied about it being work. The attendees sympathized with him for suddenly losing his wife while still having a young child. Meanwhile, Elizabeth refused to go near her father and stayed close to me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she clenched her fists. Even though she was only 5, she seemed to understand that she would never see her mother again. When a mourner asked about Elizabeth not being with her father, he approached us, but Elizabeth immediately stiffened and clung to me. "Elizabeth, come to Daddy."
No, Daddy is scary.
As the son-in-law forcefully pulled Elizabeth's arm, I pulled my granddaughter closer to me. "If she doesn't want to go, you don't need to force her." "But Tiffany, I can't have you spoiling Elizabeth. I'm her father." Feeling the coldness in his eyes, I clenched my fists and firmly replied, "I will never let Elizabeth near you. Kelly told me just before she died to save Elizabeth and keep her away from you. I wonder why she said that." For a moment, he seemed taken aback and asked me with a probing look, "Kelly said that? Did she say anything else?" Perhaps he was worried about the truth being revealed, but I thought it was too soon to reveal it. I decided to expose his lies in front of many more people. At that moment, the funeral started and he reluctantly returned to his seat. Elizabeth never left my side and sat next to me. Looking around the funeral hall, many of Kelly's former coworkers attended to say goodbye. Everyone was truly saddened by her passing. Tears welled up again as I remembered my caring daughter. Why couldn't I help her sooner? I feel so pathetic. As I was filled with frustration, my granddaughter Elizabeth tightly held my hand. In the midst of sadness, the son-in-law stood up to speak as the chief mourner. "My wife fell down the stairs and suffered a severe blow to her abdomen. I can't believe this happened. We were a loving couple and never fought. Kelly, please come back." His face turned red, his voice shook, and tears streamed down his face as he delivered a convincing performance. Many attendees were moved to tears by his display. That's when it happened. Elizabeth, who had been quietly sitting next to me, suddenly stood up and pointed at her father.
Liar! You're the one who kicked Mom's belly!
Elizabeth bit her lip and glared at him with tears streaming down her face. "What do you mean? You said she fell down the stairs, right?" A murmur spread among the attendees. Of course it would. Corey said something completely different from what my grandchild claimed. Everyone seemed puzzled by the sudden statement. Corey tried to quickly cover up Elizabeth's words. "Elizabeth, you're mad because Mom passed away while Dad was at work, right? But lying is not good."
Dad kicked Mom and pushed her down the stairs. Then Dad went somewhere. After that, Mom cried because her stomach hurt so much.
"Yeah, it's not Dad's fault since Mom's stomach started hurting when he wasn't there."
I called Dad to help Mom, but he said he was drinking and to just deal with it. That's why I called Grandma.
"Elizabeth, don't say anything more unnecessary." As Corey noticed the rising voices of criticism from the attendees, he hurriedly approached Elizabeth to forcefully stop her. I stepped in front of my grandchild and glared at Corey. "Old woman, stay out of this. Get lost." Before he could push me away, I pulled out a notebook. It was Kelly's diary. "Here, it's written what you've been doing. Everyone please listen." Corey tried to stop me from reading with the attendees' permission, but someone from his company held him back. I borrowed a microphone from the host and read carefully without missing a word. The diary described the daily verbal abuse from her husband, the struggle of not being given enough living expenses, and more. It also mentioned that Corey hit and kicked her when he was in a bad mood, causing constant injuries that were hard to read about. It seems Kelly wanted to break up, but even though she wanted a divorce, Corey threatened her saying, "I'll never let go of Elizabeth," so she wouldn't make a move. The last entry, written with a trembling hand, said, "It hurts. Mom, help me." I couldn't stop the tears from rolling down my cheeks. Hearing the heartbreaking content, cries similar to screams came from Kelly's close friends. Kelly had endured this without telling anyone. "Shut up. I just disciplined my wife. Kelly was the one at fault for not being able to handle housework while raising a child. You were using her as an outlet for your stress, right? I know you weren't even giving her proper living expenses." "I was giving her $400 a month. It's my wife's fault she couldn't manage the money." "No one can live on just that. This girl was even sacrificing her own meals while you were doing whatever you wanted, right?" "It's my money, so it's my business where I go drinking, right? People around whispered things like, "Only $400 for living expenses? You disciplined her by hitting and slapping? You went to bars?" And they all gave Corey cold stares. In response, Corey started to lash out. "I'm not the bad guy here. I just kicked her a little and she fell down the stairs on her own." "So you admit you did it?" "I don't know. I went out drinking right away, so I wasn't there when she went to the other side." "If you'd taken her to the hospital right away, she would have survived. I'll never forgive you." No one sided with him, and Corey began to cry pathetically. Then, someone among the attendees called the police, and the sound of a patrol car could be heard. Corey tried to run away, but he was restrained by relatives and handed over to the police. "Elizabeth, you did well." I hugged Elizabeth as she sobbed. Later, the police found evidence when they examined the daughter's body before cremation. The crime of taking a life is heavy, and it is unlikely that Corey will be released from prison as he shows no remorse. Elizabeth now lives with me. Our grandchild is gradually recovering and starting to smile again. I am working hard every day to increase my strength, thinking that I must be healthy to raise Elizabeth. From now on, I plan to live a peaceful life together with Elizabeth.
My name is Jessica, and I'm 49 years old. I've been married to my husband Ethan for 20 years, and since our son left home last year to attend a university in another state, I've had more free time. However, I started working part-time because we needed to send money to our son. I had been a stay-at-home mom since giving birth to him, so at first, I struggled with many things. Lately, I've been feeling more fulfilled, as my opinions have been taken into account at work. And I feel like I'm actually being useful. Hey, Ethan. I just found out I'm getting a small raise in my hourly wage. It's nice to be recognized for my hard work, isn't it? I was in a cheerful mood as I spoke to Ethan, who was absent-mindedly watching TV. Then suddenly, "So, you're saying you can live on your own now?" My husband unexpectedly asked me something that made no sense. What? Thinking I misheard him, I responded with a questioning tone. "It's perfect timing. I've been meaning to tell you." He turned his face to me and began to talk. My husband's smirking face gave me a bad feeling. "I've got a cute girlfriend now. I don't need you anymore." I was frozen in shock by his unexpected words. "Get the divorce papers and the marriage certificate from the city hall tomorrow." He said it nonchalantly. It was all too sudden, and I couldn't understand what was happening. "What do you mean?" "He found a new woman, so he wants a divorce. And he wants to remarry the new woman?" As the situation became clearer, I could feel my body shaking. Seeing me like that, my husband sneered. "I can still live as a man, unlike you, who gave up on being a woman a long time ago. It's been so long since we stopped having a relationship at night, there's no point in being together anymore." How rude and outrageous he is. It's true that we haven't had a marital relationship for a long time, but it's not because I gave up on being a woman. On the contrary, I don't want to feel attracted to a middle-aged man in his 50s with extra weight. Angry and somehow amused, I burst out laughing. "I'm tired, busy, it's a hassle. You were the one who kept avoiding me with those excuses. Now suddenly you want to live as a man? That's hilarious." Then my husband's face turned grim. "What's so funny? Don't mess with me, old lady." He showered me with harsh, vulgar words. Then, leaning back with his arms crossed, Ashley is so different. She's head over heels for me, calling me the best boyfriend ever. Look at you, excited about a tiny pay raise. How pathetic." Ethan started boasting about Ashley, his apparent affair partner, and looked down on me. Ashley. Her name. Ashley. Ashley. You are annoying. Then Ethan proudly talked about Ashley's background. She's working in the nightlife scene, over a decade younger in her mid-20s. She's carrying his child. It's not uncommon for age gap marriages these days. But a parent with an almost 20-year-old son having a child with a woman not much older than their child? I felt like I was going crazy with disgust. In life, you need love. Not with someone cold and hardened like moldy rice cake like you, but with a woman like Ashley, who has fresh, plump skin. A love that lasts forever. That's what makes spending money worthwhile. My husband ranted with a rolling tongue. So it's basically love bought with money. Choosing a young, fresh girl while ignoring his own withering self. I see. So you switched to a young, unwise girl who's after money and doesn't mind having an affair with a married man. When I pointed that out, my husband shouted, spitting in anger. It's not about money. It's about love. And he angrily spat out the words. Anyway, I'm serious. I need to marry Ashley as soon as possible and reassure her. You pack your stuff and get out. Wow. He's only focused on his own convenience. I was speechless and dumbfounded. At the same time, it started to seem rather ridiculous to me. Because the last time this person used the word love towards me was ages ago. I'm sure with that new girl, Ashley, after a while, he won't even show any reaction. With time and age, such fleeting feelings are bound to fade away. In fact, the harsh words my husband is throwing at me now will be directed at Ashley next. Really? You're pathetic. I should have noticed before we got married. When I think about it, I've taken on all the housework and childcare by myself. My husband, who never helped, but also just criticized me for not doing this or that, has changed a lot. Even though it was a time when it was taken for granted, there wasn't even a single word of appreciation, let alone love. And now, he's discarding me, who has tried so hard, and moving on to a younger woman. I couldn't believe it was a sane decision, but Ethan seemed to take my words as just sour grapes. Well, then there's no problem. Anyway, we'll fill out the paperwork on the next day off. Make sure you have both ready. And with that, he locked himself in the room. For several days after that, I spent sleepless nights and couldn't stop the tears of frustration. Still, outwardly, I pretended not to be bothered. On the next day off, my husband actually invited the other woman to our house. Hi there, Ethan's old wife. I came to help with the paperwork. The woman named Ashley, who casually sat on the sofa and hummed, crossed her legs arrogantly. As my husband said, she had smooth skin, and her confidence in her appearance was evident from her behavior. Being a night worker, her flashy makeup and overly revealing clothes were designed with a dangerously low-cut neckline. Her tight skirt was so short that even I, as a woman, didn't know where to look. But I felt that she didn't really love my husband. If my intuition was correct, her goal was surely I, who had already prepared for divorce, faced her. I didn't intend to resist, but I felt something off about her behavior. Ashley, right? Did you start dating Ethan knowing that he's married? Calling me an old wife means you understand each other's positions, right? She laughed loudly and said, I'm not stupid. You know, don't underestimate me, you old lady. You're the one who's going to be dumped. I'm going to be Ethan's wife from now on. See, it's a simple story. She smirked and talked down to me in a lisping tone. Well, I'm glad you answered so smoothly. I managed to record it too. So that means you also know that I can claim compensation from you, right? I showed her the recorder I was using to record our conversation. She made a face and complained to my husband. Ethan, you said she wouldn't bother us, right? This isn't what we agreed on. She complained to my husband. My husband tried to calm her down, saying, Calm down. Don't worry. I've got it all planned. Right, Ashley? Don't be mad. Ethan, Ashley, their conversation was really sickening. As I made a disgusted face, my husband brought out some documents. Write the divorce papers with these conditions. They listed the conditions for the divorce, including alimony and pension division. You're giving $230,000 to this old lady? That'll take away from my share. Even without questioning, she openly revealed her thoughts. As she repeated, "It'll take away." I was convinced. Her goal was my husband's inheritance from his father, which he was currently processing. "Well, Ashley, this includes child support." My husband tried to comfort her, even though she didn't look happy. To him, her blatant behavior seemed cute. "So, it's like a severance pay. Expensive, huh?" I struggled to control my anger that had reached its peak. Anyway, I was sure of my intuition and said, "If you're willing to put these conditions in a notarized document, I'm fine with it. Also, I'd like the payment in a lump sum." I added that. I kept my response minimal, and my husband, knowing that our conversation was being recorded, agreed to these terms. "Are you satisfied now?" While I was talking to my husband, that woman had been bored and urged us to finish the divorce papers. "Old lady, make sure to leave by the end of the month, okay? I'm canceling my current place." Once the notarized document is ready, I'll submit the divorce papers. I'll leave as soon as that's done. As I replied, she grumbled with dissatisfaction and reluctantly left. Eventually, the notarized document was finalized, and my husband and I divorced. Then, as if she had been waiting for it, that woman came to kick me out. "Come on, hurry up and leave, and don't dawdle." She laughed and seemed to be enjoying herself. "I just submitted our marriage registration. Now I'm Ethan's wife. This wonderful house is all mine." Reluctantly, I handed her the keys to the front door. Before leaving, I wanted to confirm something and asked, "Isn't Ethan the same age as your parents? If you call me an old lady, since he's older than me, he is an old man. Why did you choose him as your marriage partner?" I asked. Her answer was exactly what I expected. "Ethan is a division manager at a top-tier company. This house is a recently renovated property near the station. It's a stylish single-family home, and I'll change the furniture to suit my taste." She was daydreaming. "Ethan will treat me like a princess. He's not handsome and is an old man, but he said he'd buy me anything I want. My future is secure with this." She smirked with satisfaction, as if to mock me. "I hope everything goes as you wish." With a sigh, I left the house I had lived in for many years. I moved to a dormitory at a certain university. I was hired as a live-in dormitory mother, which is quite rare these days. Actually, before that, I had been working part-time at a company cafeteria. When I explained my situation and my desire to start a new life alone in a distant place, my boss, who appreciated my work, helped me find this opportunity. I gratefully accepted the job at the dormitory, which had just become vacant due to an employee's retirement. I'm so glad I got my nutritionist certification. The rent and utilities are super cheap. Though I don't have much free time to go out, it's a comfortable and fun workplace. About 3 months into this new life, I received a phone call from my ex-husband. "Mom is in bad shape. Can you help with her care?" How could he say such a thing? We are strangers now. It's your young wife's responsibility to take care of her. When I pointed out the obvious, he said, "Ashley is pregnant. Mom has dementia and throws things, so it's dangerous." He said, "So it's okay for her to throw things at me." That's some twisted logic, but I flatly refused. "Don't call me anymore. We have nothing to do with each other." I pushed him away with forceful words. Although she was my mother-in-law for 20 years, we never had a close relationship. Anyway, I had just started living independently, and I didn't have the time or resources to provide care elsewhere. But my ex-husband somehow found out where I was and came to see me with that woman. "If you can't help, at least return the money we paid as consolation." What a ridiculous demand. I don't think I'm obligated to do that, do you? As I pushed him away coldly, that woman glared at me fiercely. "You knew and tricked us. There's no inheritance, and we're drowning in debt. With a scream, she threw documents at me, scattering them all over the place. I didn't trick anyone. You just assumed Ethan had property on your own. I shrugged my shoulders on purpose. Yes, when I was handling my late father-in-law's inheritance, I found out that he had a large amount of debt. If that were the only issue, we could have just disclaimed the inheritance. However, Ethan had already canceled his father's mobile phone contract and sold the household items and valuables for cash before the procedure. There's a law that says you can't disclaim an inheritance if you've touched the property before the procedure, and that's exactly what happened. As a result, the debt fell directly on Ethan and that woman. With a triumphant tone, I said, Ethan just dumped all the inheritance paperwork on me without listening to a word I said. Ashley, you used that money to continue your relationship with him, right? I blurted out. What? You should have told me something so important. Ethan argued, but that's what I wanted to say, too. It's your fault for not listening when you should have. You two need to take responsibility together. What? I didn't know anything about it, and I never heard any of that. The woman looked pale and flustered. So, you're just going to pretend you don't know and run away with the money. The two of them pressed me hard, but I didn't care. It's funny you say that. If you didn't cheat, you wouldn't have needed money for your mistress, and you could have given up your inheritance. You're definitely the one who caused this situation. Ugh! He groaned and backed away. Ashley, you knew he was married, pursued him for his assets, had a child, and kicked me out. You wanted this position, didn't you? I lectured the girl who was old enough to be my daughter. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't want this old man at all. There was more for me to say. Do you remember the notarized documents from our divorce? I received alimony, pension division, and child support from Ethan. But besides that, I can also claim alimony from you. What? You're saying $230,000 isn't enough? You're so greedy! She shouted in disbelief and insulted me. I would have forgotten about it if you left me alone, but you come up with nonsense like demanding I take care of his mother or return the alimony I received. I can't take it anymore. I told her I had a recording of our divorce negotiations and was serious about claiming alimony. She ran away without looking back. As I watched her go, I turned to Ethan, who was still standing there. How can she run like that when she's in her last trimester? Is she really pregnant? And where's the love now that she's run away? At my question, Ethan gasped. I was wrong. Please come back. He begged with teary eyes, looking aged all at once. No way. Please leave. Jessica. My ex-husband sobbed, and as pitiful as he was, he didn't deserve any mercy considering his past actions. Later, just as I expected, the woman disappeared, leaving only a divorce notification behind. It seems her pregnancy was a lie, too. My ex-husband was left to handle his debt and care for his mother alone, and he withered away from stress and overwork. As for me, I found my calling as dorm mother for kids the same age as my son, and people have been telling me I look younger lately. From now on, I'll live honestly without arrogance or scheming. Everyone, please be careful when getting a divorce.